Hello, I'm LaTanya Turner. Earlier in the program, we asked, who cares? And by now you see that the answer is almost any of us. In fact, most of us at some point in our lives will be caregivers, including me. I'm juggling that responsibility for my mother, just like those you saw in our report. Every situation is different, and so are the methods and resources used by family caregivers. But there are some common barriers to face, especially for new caregivers. Let's discuss those now with a group of professionals who work with family caregivers. Our panelists are Cindy Natch, representing 50 Forward Children of Aging Parents, or COPE, and a certified aging in place specialist. Tim Takis, an attorney who specializes in elder law and estate planning. And Gretchen Gagan, a certified geriatric care manager and owner of LifeLinks, who helps families make decisions on behalf of older adults. Thank you all for joining us today. Let's start with what we just described, a new caregiver, whether it was something that was gradually coming or happened suddenly. They are in this role of taking care of an older adult. What is the first step, Gretchen, that you advise people when they find themselves in this situation?
Really, the two most important things are information and communication. So being able to gather as much information as you can about their medical situation, their financial situation, things like social security numbers is really important. And then if you have time to communicate about wishes and desires, then that's really a good second step.
Communicate with the care recipient.
Yes, yes. Well, and it's really important. I think people underestimate the number of people that can care about an individual. And when it becomes a difficult time, whether it's a crisis or a long-term, I think lots of family members become involved. And so the more you can tell everyone that's involved about your wishes, the more likely that is to happen, and the less likely there is to be conflict or disagreement about that. So tell your in-town daughter, but also your out-of-town daughter or son, so that everybody can be on the same page.
Now, that's probably more of a gradual situation, but suppose there's more of a crisis. You know, someone is in, you know, a trauma type situation, maybe a stroke or something like that. People really can't maybe communicate. But they know that this person is going to need long-term services. What about in the situation like that? Either of you?
Well, sometimes what happens, and that happens a lot for our older clients who have, so you have a married couple and they're doing very well and aging successfully, and then say one of them has a stroke. You know, and then and all of a sudden, and life just changes for them. You know, so then often our representations begin that way, where the spouse, say the wife, comes in with maybe children, and they're trying to figure out, now what do we do? And so for us as the lawyer, often they're looking at how are we going to pay for care? We have my wife is, or my husband is in the hospital. He's going to be discharged to a skilled nursing facility. It's going to cost several thousands of dollars a month. Where's the money going to come from? We never thought this was going to happen. You know, so how do we plan for this? So often that's how we get into it.
Yeah.
You know, often finances at that point.
Well, branching off on that, Tim, involving a third party, I think, is really important. Yeah. When you're trying to gather a lot of information and make a lot of decisions quickly, if you're the caring person, your emotions can really get involved. So whether it's an attorney or a care manager or some other third party who can utilize their experience with other similar situations and kind of bring you along.
Without the emotion.
Right, then you can get along quicker with enough information instead of making decisions based on emotion.
Okay, and certainly people can, you know, if they have the resources, hire someone to help with this, but the support group, COPE, Children of Aging Parents, is that a resource that maybe someone who's new should just jump right in and say, come to these meetings and get with your members and say, I need some help, I don't know what to do?
Absolutely. COPE is an initiative by 50 Forward, and the goal is education. Most of us who are either find ourselves in a caregiving situation, either that's because of a crisis or simply because our spouse is aging or our parents are aging, we don't really know what to do, and we don't really know what to where to start and who to talk to. So the purpose of COPE is basically an educational forum, that if you have a question, it's a safe place. It's a place for caregivers to build their own community. If you have a question about when do I talk to mom and dad about stopping to drive their car. You know, let's talk about that in an environment that you can ask any question. It's a safe place for you to ask questions, so you can come up with a technique perhaps to start having that conversation that's a difficult conversation with your loved one.
I have to ask, is there a misstep that is common that you see? That you say, okay, there are so many people that do this and it's the wrong thing to do right off the bat. Anything?
A misstep.
Sounds like each of you has something in mind. What's the common mistake that you would say, if there's one thing I would suggest people don't do, it's this?
Probably is to not looking before they leap.
Good
You know,
point. What do you mean?
we had a case literally that came in this morning. This woman came in and she's found herself suddenly becoming a caregiver for her sister. Mm-hmm. And she comes in and she has no information about her sister's diagnosis or her prognosis or about her money or about her legal documents. And one of the things that she asked us, she says, well, you know, how should I spend the money? And we're going, well, how much does your sister have? Mm-hmm. But she did go out and she bought a funeral contract. And it's like, okay, so why did you do that? And apparently it's because somebody probably told her that that's just something that someday she's going to need to do, so she did it.
But she wasn't really clear on what the actual medical condition and prognosis might be.
Exactly. I mean, does she, you know, is it a good time to do that now? Mm-hmm. You know, what money does she have? Does she really need to use that money to take care of her sister? Mm-hmm. You know, all of those sorts of things. But somehow she read something or she talked to a next door neighbor or whatever, you know, and they found out that, and she says, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go buy a funeral contract. And it's like, well, okay.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so look before you leap.
Look before
That's
you
a good
leap.
point. Did you want to add something, Gretchen?
Yeah, and it's related, but I think more about describing it such as a scab on your arm, and you might notice that. And I think we're all so busy and we're living pretty independent and separated lives, and so the first thing a family member might notice is this little scab, and they kind of want to just slap a Band-Aid on that, you know. And then what happens is there become a lot more, and they just keep putting these Band-Aids on because there's a lot going on, and you're wanting to address that visible issue. But when you peel that scab back, there's a lot of festering wounds underneath, and until you really get to the whole picture and take care of the whole person, from medical to emotional to psychological to what they're eating and how regularly they're taking their medications, you're going to continue to have the little things
So maybe
popping up.
someone jumps right in and says, okay, I'm going to hire a cleaning service.
Right.
But that's not really getting to the core problem, is what you're saying. They need to look at it more holistically, comprehensively.
Right. So why is the house not getting cleaned like it used to? Is there a vision problem? Is there a cognition problem? Do they think they just did it yesterday, but it's been 3 months ago because their sense of time is different with their dementia? Is there a physical problem? They aren't able to get down and scrub behind the toilet like they used to. So being able to look at what's causing those problems is really important.
Right.
And how do you get to that? Because we know that sometimes the care recipient can be very clever.
That's right.
You know, with
That's right.
keeping that concealed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one of the things that is important to talk about is that when we're put in the position to be a caregiver, or if we choose to be a caregiver, there's often not a lot of education relative to actually caregiving. Mm-hmm. So it becomes a very overwhelming state very, very quickly. So for a lot of folks, it's working through their own personal emotion first while they're gathering information that is probably beneficial for them to do, is to actually seek education about what opportunities are out there and what resources are out there, but also recognize that this is an emotional state for themselves and perhaps they need a little help on that issue.
Okay. And sometimes the emotion comes from within the family. We have heard from people in the report that dealt with that very clearly and early on, and it created many challenges. So what do you recommend about dealing with those family dynamics that probably pre-existed this whole situation, but they surface and create challenges? And I know you deal with that,
Oh,
Gretchen.
sure. As much as you can, make a plan to begin with. So as soon as you begin to recognize that there's a problem, gather all of the parties that are involved and begin to talk about what if this, what if this. And you can't come up with every what if, but if you cover as many as you can and kind of make a tentative plan that everybody can agree on, there's less arguments later. But then also you have to recognize that it's going to change. It's not going to go exactly like you want it to. And then to try to remember to keep the focus on the well-being of the older person. It gets really difficult because we're all balancing so many different things. So it's easy to begin to think as the caregiver, how can I make it easier on my child rearing duties as well, or my career duties? But really trying to focus on what does mom really want, and is there a way that we can make that happen?
You know, and Gretchen makes the point that I think we want to make here, and I think all of us are making in our own way, is that the care of an older person can be planned. Because a lot of times when you get into this situation, I mean, nobody really has experience in it, and I think, as Cindy said, is you don't go to school for this. You know, so people often get thrust into this, and they're going, okay, now what do we do? And they think that always they have to react, and they hope that they can just sort of muddle on through.
Okay.
You know, and so it's actually something that we can plan for. And fortunately, I mean, obviously that's the reason for this panel. That's a reason for Aging Matters. You know, is to let people know is that you know, we can't necessarily predict everything that's going to happen, but when things do happen, we know that we can have a plan in place for that.
And so let's hope that people watching say, okay, I want to start developing a care plan.
Right. Yes. I mean, yeah.
Best case scenario.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the ideal scenario. When do you do that? Do you do that when, you know, mom and dad are still on vacation visiting you, or do you, you know, do it at a point where people retire?
Yeah.
And how do you start that?
You know, it's such an interesting dynamic because most folks really don't want to talk about their own personal aging process. So all of us would readily say the earlier the better. But the reality is often not that, is that folks are waiting for a crisis, or a crisis just comes about, and then all of a sudden it's a reactionary position. So depending on what area the individual is working on at that particular time, it could be planning for that actual need of hospitalization, or someone is coming out of the hospital and planning for what happens after a hospitalization. Powers of attorney, huge issue for all of us at any age, really.
Right. And it's like you're mentioning is, okay, when do you start planning? And now Gretchen's probably going to say is that if you're 60 years old and you're in great health and you just got off the golf course, she's probably not going to hire Gretchen.
Right.
You know, because it's
You can still make a plan.
You can still make a plan.
Make a plan.
You know, but you know, you're not necessarily going to need a geriatric care manager. And in our office, you know, people coming into our office, you know, and if they're in good health, maybe they need legal planning, they need financial planning, but they don't necessarily need personal care planning, because you know, the fundamental thing here, I think all of us, I guess, that distinguishes all of our clients is that there's some disability, or there's a health problem. And sometimes it's a crisis, which means literally like, you know, the person that has a stroke and it's in the hospital. And sometimes, and often this is really what we see more and more of, is that the person who has developed an Alzheimer's disease, you know, and they're not going to get better.
Do people put too much stock in the formal process? I mean, a plan could just be somebody writing a letter to say, you know, I'm just going to put this in the drawer, right? I mean, it could just be, I just want you to kind of know what I want when I, you know, might need care.
Absolutely. And I think there are a lot of things that come up that give people an excuse to have that conversation. So anybody who's watching this can use this as an excuse. You know, Mom, I saw this documentary and I think it's something that we really need to talk about. Or a friend of your parent might pass away or might have a health crisis, or that gives you an opportunity to say, oh, it was really unfortunate what happened. Let's talk about how I could meet your needs better if that situation applied to you. And then it's kind of an excuse to begin to have that conversation.
Good suggestion, yes.
And sometimes that's referred to as the talk.
Yeah.
The talk.
The talk.
Okay.
You know, but we also try to remind our clients and our family members is that the talk is good if you you know, and it's good to, and if you're the child or if you're the potential caregiver, you know, is to invite your parent to have that conversation. Yeah. But often, you know, sometimes our parents, you know, interpret that as you're trying to take something away from me. You're trying to intervene. Yeah. You're trying to take control over my life. And so a lot of that then becomes is how do you sort of slide into that, you know, so that it becomes non-threatening to the older person.
And I think actually turning it exactly on its head and saying the best way for it to go the way you want is to tell me now. Because if I'm guessing, then it's going to have to be whatever I want if you can't tell me later. Yes. But if you tell me now what you want, then you have more control of it actually happening that way. If there's anything we can do to make that happen, we will.
Because ultimately, the control issue is one of the biggest issues that either make your aging process feel okay or make it feel not so okay. So if the family can really help define early on while that individual, whether it's you or me, or any of us, what we really want and help facilitate that through the aging process, it gives everyone a sense of control, and that is so important.
You know, I want to turn a little bit to one of the real challenges that came through as we talked to caregivers, and that is how they are impacted through their physical and mental health and their financial health by just being in this role. As we have reported in the documentary, the average amount spent out of pocket is $5,500 a year, and that's probably on the low end for caregivers.
It doesn't seem like much.
No, right. It doesn't. And of course, we've also talked about the health impact. So, and this might be a question to start with you, Cindy. How can people avoid the tendency to dip into their own finances or risk their own health while they manage this process?
Well, you know, there's kind of an adage within the caregiving community. It's not whether someone is, as a caregiver, going to get sick themselves. It's when are they going to get sick? Because caregivers put so much they are in so much emotional stress, and they put emotional stress on themselves as well. And it's very difficult to step away and take time to plan and to simply breathe and to give forgiveness as a caregiver to yourself so that things are not going to be perfect, and it's okay for things not to be perfect. Those folks that are in caregiving for year after years really do start to have physical ailments often because they're not taking enough time out for themselves, and that can be manifested in a variety of different ways.
And one thing that we try to sort of teach or educate our families about who are now in being caregivers is that it's a job.
Really? Okay. So you got to look at it that way. Yep. Huh.
You know,
I don't think most people look at it.
Well, what we try to do is we try to separate their caregiver responsibilities or what they feel like their obligations from being a daughter or a family member, because the concern that we have is how do you want to remember your mom? Do you want to remember her as being, you know, changing her diaper,
being needy,
you know, or do you want to remember her as, you know, having a mother-daughter, you know, you know, that's a very precious relationship that we want to, you know, we want to retain. So one of the ways that you look at it is if it's going to be a job, make sure that it's $5,500 a year that it costs, maybe mom or maybe the parent pays for that. I mean, caregiver doesn't have to be free. Just because the child is doing this, you know, children, there's no reason why they can't be paid for that. You know, and that's part of, I think, having the plan. You know, is okay. You have a family meeting or whatever, and hopefully you have maybe they're more than one child or whatever, and they can all kind of get together. And maybe if they have differences, at least they can focus on, you know, how do we take care of mom? How do we take care of our parents?
I think that's a good point. I think also, though, you have situations where people, maybe some of that investment, if you want to call it that, or expense, is because maybe their career has stalled out, or maybe they're cutting their hours at work, or maybe mom or dad doesn't have the resources, and I'm not going to let her, you know, go to some place I'm not really happy with, so I'm just going to pay the additional. So what I guess I'm wondering is, what does that mean for the generation of caregivers who will be care recipients if their spending their money.
And this, we try to work with each family because what's right for each person is different. And so for some people, they really either, if they don't help out mom as much as they think they should, then they have to live with that guilt. And if that's going to really eat away at them, then they have to do something that they feel comfortable with. But trying to establish what are their own family and financial values. So do they want to be able to pay for their children to go to college? Do they want to be able to finance their own retirement? And how do they protect that as well as appropriately care for mom? And there's not an unending amount of hours and there's not an unending amount of money. So trying to find the balance is
Well,
the
I
hard
have to
part.
ask how much of this has to do with the policies that are in place. And could we do more in this country, for instance, to give tax incentives or tax breaks or in the workplace, enhancing medical leave so that it's more supportive of elder care giving. I mean, couldn't that help with some of the financial
Well, I guess it could. I mean,
what?
and there's certainly some companies that have, I mean, they know it's an HR problem. They know that, companies know that a lot of their employees are walking in the door and they're thinking, okay, my employee is thinking about taking care of their loved one. And that's not good for the company and it's certainly not good for the employee. So certainly it's a workplace issue. And it's going to continue to be a workplace issue.
And I think you bring up a very, very solid and broad topic in that I think that companies are just now really, although it's been spoken about for years and years, I think companies are just now realizing through statistics and a little bit more analysis that the number of caregiving hours that a worker is giving for their elderly folks is very much on the rise. So more and more emphasis on looking at that is probably the best place to start. More statistics and more, although anecdotally, probably everybody in the room can always tell a lot of stories, but if we can start getting companies to really look at that within their own organization, I think change potentially could begin. I don't know that we're policymakers here, but we'd like to see.
And I do think it would be nice for family care to be universal. So whether it's a mother taking time off to have a child or a father to take time off to spend with a baby or adult children time to take care of their aging parents, I think it's all equally important, and people have to be able to use it for different circumstances because not everyone has children. So I think also employee assistance programs are doing a better job of providing resources so that instead of their employees having to spend time at work searching for answers and trying to figure out what to do, they can have a resource through their employee assistance program who's knowledgeable about resources for aging people in their community, and they can go there.
Because one of the things that we think about as, being all of us who are doing this and who are planning for the care of an older person is, and one of the things that always runs through the mind of the caregiver is and Gretchen mentioned, is the what if.
Right.
It's like, what happens if something happens to me? Who's going to take care of mom? And part of that is that if you have, if that caregiver is employed, that has to be a part of the support system. The employer is in some ways a part of that caregiver's support system. Believe it or not, if that person is employed, that's part of the support system. And that's a lot of what we do is, I know that Gretchen, you mentioned that earlier, as part of how do you develop a support system for your client? And what happens if that support system sort of gets compromised or something else, then because of a caregiver crisis or a caregiver burnout or something.
And is that a topic that comes up often with COPE?
It is. The burnout factor is very high. So usually when folks come in for a COPE session, they're coming because there's a dynamic speaker and a topic that is very much near and dear to their heart. We tend to have a 4 or 5 week series, and we bring up pertinent topics. Often we'll partner with a church and give the church a variety of different topics. I mentioned one earlier about transportation, but it's a wide variety of topics that are near and dear to that particular caregiver, and that's why they come. And sometimes caregivers come in and they are all bright and sassy, and other times you can tell that they've been caregiving for a day or a week and they're coming in very drained and they really are looking for support, not not just education, but just being with somebody that they can talk to that relates to their unique situation. If you've never been a caregiver, it is a little difficult to really relate to what that caregiver can be going through.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that I did hear quite frequently from the caregivers, and I can personally say this, that it's overall perceived to be a positive, satisfying experience. Many people see it as a way of giving back to someone that has given to them, or even learning new skills. You know, wow, I didn't know I could do this.
Okay, yes and no.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yes,
it's a positive experience, but the danger that lurks there is that you always have to focus on what are the needs of the older person first. Just because you get psychic emotional satisfaction taking care of mom at home doesn't mean that's the best thing for her.
Okay. So that's the trap you're
That's
saying.
the trap is that and
It may be mom took care of me, so now I'm taking care of her, but that may not be the best thing.
exactly.
Okay.
We do work in the world of aging in place, and aging in place is a broad term, but more specifically, is aging in place the best solution? And you have to look at a variety of different things. You have to look at the home environment. Is the home environment supportive of that individual for the short term and the long term? Is the caregiving to a point where it is really draining the resources of the family, either financially or as the caregiving person? Is that person kind of crumping during this time frame? So having someone who is not so emotionally attached that can come in and really listen and provide the planning steps and trying to understand what the goals of the family and the individual are is absolutely invaluable.
That's a great point to end on, and I think it's important advice for everybody to consider. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and we want to offer you additional opportunities to learn about caregiving resources and support. So we encourage you to visit our website at wnpt.org/Aging Matters for more information. Thanks for joining us.
Major funding for NPT Report's Aging Matters is provided by Cigna HealthSpring, lead sponsor of NPT Report's Aging Matters. Cigna HealthSpring, helping customers get more from Medicare and more from life. The West End Home Foundation, support in the care of seniors through many organizations in Middle Tennessee. The Jeanette Travis Foundation, dedicated to improving the health and well-being of the Middle Tennessee community. And by members of NPT. Thank you.